So the first thing I'm going to do when I approach my desk is I'm going to set it up so that I can easily start laying things out in ways that I can easily find them. When you approach a desk and it's a brand new show file, you'll be presented with something like this, with a bunch of screens and a bunch of options. You get to decide what you want to put out where. Magic Sheets are wonderful tools, and I certainly use them when necessary. However, they are a bit time-consuming to edit. So if you are on a time crunch and you're not always at the same desk or the same rig all the time, I find a lot of the built-in EOS tools actually allow me to be more flexible and work quicker. My main tool for laying out my screens is Direct Selects. So I'll go ahead and I will open up a Direct Selects tab, and it's going to present me with different options of what I want to lay out. The nice thing that I really like about Direct Selects is it's really customizable. So for example, if I want my groups here on the top and I want to have focus palettes on the bottom, that's great. And if I need to add more things to this screen, I can just add more and more of these Direct Selects banks and then put what I need there, and it's just really quickly it's done. What I also like is I don't typically do a lot of scrolling through. I want everything on one page where I can see it at all times. I don't want anyone hiding in different Direct Selects pages or anything like that. So for example, here on my second screen, I already have a bunch of groups built, and we're going to talk about building groups in the next segment. But I already have a bunch of groups built, but I actually can't see all of my groups. So I'm going to go in here and I can actually add more columns to this until I see all of my groups laid out like I want to see them. I can also add more rows so I can see everything I need. And then I can adjust the height of some of these. For example, I only have 2 rows of focus palettes, which we're going to discuss building. So I can come into this bank, and I can actually get rid of some of these rows. And then my favorite feature of Direct Selects is that I can come in and I can turn off, I can grab all of these Direct Selects, and I can actually turn off their buttons and maximize their button size. Because I don't want to be doing paging. I know I'm not going to have more targets than I'm using. So now I have full screen layout of the targets that I need without any unnecessary information. So it's really easy, quick and easy for me to find it. So when I'm laying out my desk, I already have a couple of views built on another workspace that I'm going to open up. So when I'm laying out my desk for busking, the way that I like to lay out my desk is I divide it in half, basically. When I'm doing playback, I am typically huddled around the faders, because all of my playback is coming off these faders. I want quick access to all the buttons and all the faders. So on my left-handmost screen here, my screen 3, I have all of my playback information. Down here at the bottom, I'm using the fader displays, and I have those mapped directly above the faders in question, so I can really quickly look up and see a larger display for what I'm doing. I can see what all the buttons are doing. These 2x20 wings are great. I love the amount of buttons and the amount of faders I have. However, one drawback to them is their LED screens. The text is kind of small, and it's hard for me to read on the fly. So by putting these fader tools up here, I can actually see the readouts of what all of these faders are doing in the percentages larger and in the different colors, so I can quickly denote, okay, this is a sub, this is a cue list. I can see what queue I'm sitting in for all of these. And with the new fader tools, I can actually come in here and I can add multiple banks of faders, so I can add more columns or more rows. Or what my favorite thing is, for example, for laying them above the faders here, is I can actually disable the sliders. So now it gives me really quick access to a bunch of buttons without taking up the screen real estate of a whole bunch of virtual faders. Busking is all about real estate management. That's the #1 way I view it, is I have a limited amount of screen real estate, and I have a limited number of buttons and faders, and I want to make sure that I maximize the layout of those screens and those faders and those buttons to allow me quick access to whatever I need. My second screen here, my screen 2, it's a mix of playback and recall for programming. So here at the top, I have all of my groups laid out, followed by my color palettes, focus palettes, and beam palettes. I'm not typically going to use these too much during playback. This is primarily a programming tool. However, I want them quickly at hand in case I need to access something during a show, like something unexpected happens. Like maybe they come out to do an announcement before the show to announce the band. I really quickly want to be able to grab all of my beams on that truss and tilt them up. And I might not have that particular thing on a fader. The only magic sheet that I have in this entire file is right down here at the bottom, and it's a color selection magic sheet that we're going to talk about at the end of the video. To the right of that, I have a couple macro buttons that I can use to assign for whatever I want. And finally, all the way on screen 1, all the way on the right-hand side, I have my live and my blind displays. Because when I'm programming, I am primarily on this side of the desk. I want access to the keypad. And if you're on an Ion, obviously these faders are a little closer to your keypad, but I want quick access to my encoders, and this is where I'm going to have all of my information for what the channels are currently doing, or what my playback sources are doing. But when I'm playing back, I don't particularly care what my PSD or what my live display is saying, because I can see it on the screen, right? I can run this fader up and I can see that those lights turn on, and when I'm busking, it's what's on the stage that matters. And because I'm not recording, I don't really need to pay attention to that stuff. So when I'm in my playback position, this stuff is as far away as possible because I don't really care about what it's doing. I want to maximize the screen real estate that's in front of me. Remember, when you're setting up your displays, you're not tied to the first thing that you come up with. My displays are always in flux. As I need things, I'm going to add them or move them around on my screens to make what makes sense. So how I lay out my screens in the beginning is probably not how they're going to look by the time the show is ready to open. So don't be afraid to add or move direct select tiles or frames or split your screens as you need them to maximize your screen real estate.